Story plays a major role in video games today. Unlike the founding titles of early generations, modern games rely heavily on explaining what and why anything needs to be done. To this extent, the story and direction of games have usually been hands-off, putting the player in a passive role. However, games incorporating player choice that can drastically alter the story are increasingly common. Being able to make decisions, then see the lingering effects that reflect those actions, improves both immersion and player engagement considerably. There are varying levels of cause and effect systems that give players these options, and the consequences can range from small bonuses or hindrances to huge and game-changing repercussions. There are many games to demonstrate this fact. Actually, there are too many to mention. Keep in mind that the titles mentioned here are only used to make a point, including this first one, which more than sufficiently depicts the immediate consequences of player choice. Deus Ex: Human Revolution is a sci-fi game that takes place in a futuristic cyberpunk reality. Aside from being able to play through the game using multiple different techniques, there are many times when conversation-driven decisions have to be made. Though some of the choices do have long-lasting effects, the majority of the decisions have immediate or slightly delayed outcomes. Moreover, the rewards or penalties can be of questionable value based on the particular playstyle utilized. Spare a rebel leader and he'll give you valuable information later. Give a weapon to a hacker fleeing from commandos, and you'll find yourself on the receiving end of a generous credit donation hours later. There's also the plethora of decisions to be made in the non-essential side quests throughout the game. The various results that can occur from all these events may seem useless, but it's undeniable that having a choice, no matter how small, is satisfying. After all, there's nothing quite like holding someone's life in your virtual hands, or pondering whether or not to take a bribe, or simply just screwing someone over because you can.
Sorry, Windmill. You're on your own.
Oh, fuck you, man!
Even though Deus Ex: Human Revolution has larger choices to make, its plethora of smaller choices and their less sizable consequences improve the game, even if only to a minimal extent. As far as larger choices go, though, another game with expansive options demonstrates the quality of being able to make critical choices. Fallout New Vegas, while being a game with honest improvements over its predecessor, is also a title that places heavy emphasis on player-driven choice. The decision forks in New Vegas are as clean-cut as they come, with major story-changing decisions being announced. What New Vegas does different from other games, though, is force the player to change the story, making the ability to alter the direction of the game a requirement, and pointing out the sides that can be chosen significantly empowers the player. This trumps up the gamer's ego, makes him or her feel important, and firmly establishes the player as a VIP playing a very high-stakes game.
Oh, don't be coy. You've been playing a high-stakes game ever since Victor dug you out of the ground. Don't be afraid to admit it.
By designing decisions in a game to be so pronounced and cleanly cut, the messy scenarios and discomforting stress that would realistically come with such large choices is alleviated. For this exact reason, it's fun to choose the fate of the Mojave Wasteland, making it an experience that's worth repeating. The drawback to this type of unrealistic choice design, however, is just that, unrealism. Obviously, though, the fact that video games are primarily fiction makes unrealistic decision-making easy to overlook. However, that doesn't mean much more integrated, believable, and realistic designs of decision-making don't work in games. Actually, the exact opposite is true, as proven by one very successful game. Mass Effect 2 does several things right on many channels to be a critically acclaimed game. However, one of its most important features that makes up half of the gameplay is its dialogue and conversation system. who can be spoken to, and the complexity of the possible outcomes makes the game an incredible web of what-if scenarios. What Mass Effect 2 does most impressively, though, is adapt the main story to choices the player makes which pertain to non-essential missions. This is something that not many games do. Clearly state that neglecting to handle an issue, or not making a decision, is making a decision within itself. This design of cause and effect manifests itself in the fates of the various team members that can be recruited throughout the game. Each individual has his or her own problems, and if those matters aren't resolved by the time the endgame rolls around, some sort of penalty comes with it. That's not all either. There's also the standard pitfalls of making bad choices during critical moments, where the cause and effects are clean cut. Even when overlooking many elements that make Mass Effect 2 such a good title, the system that applies consequence to player actions, or lack thereof, elevates the game above many others that exist, proving that the weight of player choice matters quite a lot in games. As an interactive medium, it's only natural that making decisions is part of the experience. No matter if the scenario is small with only trivial outcomes, enormous with long-term consequences, or realistic enough to make lack of an action a choice within itself, it's clear that being able to choose is a desirable option to have. After all, there's nothing quite as discouraging as playing a game that feels like it's on rails, and having no control over why things are happening. Since games are about interaction, why shouldn't you be able to influence the story events? Until next time, I'm William Strife, and this has been a video blog from B10G.net, June 4th, 2012. Strife out.